Let's begin this third session. So I hope you all had a good lunch. And in this third session, we're going to focus on the stages of progress. What are the stages we go through in progress in this shamatha practice? But first, we'll continue with the meditation, the one we did before lunchtime, the mindfulness of breathing, focusing on the abdomen. Very good for improving stability of attention. Following that, we'll begin with a short review of some of the points from this morning. And then we'll look at what's called the prerequisites, which is 6 points which can help us to understand how to set up our life in such a way to support this practice, what things are important in our life. And then we'll move on to the last of the shamatha practices that we're doing today, that is focusing on the breath at the entrance of the nostrils. And after that, we'll look at these 9 stages that we briefly saw in that color diagram earlier, and then time for question and answer as we've been doing. So the first meditation is the mindfulness of breathing, focusing on the area of the abdomen. And in this meditation, again, if you find that you are distracted a lot and you found that counting the breath was helpful, you might like to introduce that. If you didn't find it helpful or not necessary, just leave it out. So let's do that practice now. Letting go of any external distractions and allowing the mind to descend into the body. And simply become aware of sensations throughout the body. And using the out-breath to relax and release any tightness or tension in any part of the body. Allowing the body to become completely relaxed, completely at ease. Allowing the breathing to settle into its natural rhythm. And releasing all appearances, releasing any thoughts that may arise, and allowing the mind to come to rest. To come to rest in the stillness of the present moment. Allowing the mind to remain relaxed, still, and clear. And from that basis in stillness, start to become aware of the sensations of the breath in the area of the abdomen. Maintaining an ongoing flow of mindfulness of the sensations of the breath in the area of the abdomen. And monitoring that mindfulness with introspection, noticing if you're becoming dull or distracted. And if you are, simply reapply mindfulness to the breath. Bring back the mind to focus on the sensations of the breath in the area of the abdomen. And if you're finding that you're constantly becoming distracted, and if you find it helpful, you might like to introduce some counting the breath to help stabilize your attention. We can bring the meditation to a close. Seems like the lamp is batteries going. Okay. Just a short review. So we're doing the shamatha practice. Shama means calm. Ta means to abide. Calm abiding, a mind that is calm, clear, and focused on a single object. We saw a lot of benefits for this shamatha practice. And how to train the shamatha practice, the prerequisites, how to set up our life in a conducive way to support this practice, we'll look at this session. The actual meditation practice, in the first session, we looked at how to prepare body, speech, and mind at the beginning of each session, not only for this meditation, but all meditation practices. And for the actual shamatha practice, we looked in the first session about the qualities to cultivate: relaxation, stability, clarity. The object of focus to focus on for beginners, most often recommended in many Buddhist traditions, is the breath. But then also Alan Wallace was recommending observing the mind and resting in awareness as alternatives. And then also we looked at the two tools in the previous session of mindfulness and introspection. Mindfulness to remember the object, to hold the object. Introspection was quality control. And then we also looked at these 5 faults and 8 antidotes in the previous session. And in the last session, we look at how we can bring this practice into daily life, that often people do, in fact, put a lot of effort into their shamatha meditation. But then when they get up from the meditation practice, they run around like crazy the rest of the day and they wonder why they're not making any progress. It's because the activities we do in the day are working against the shamatha practice. So we'll look at how we can integrate shamatha practice in daily life so that our daily life not only is not working against our meditation practice, but actually is part of our practice. Again, those qualities of relaxation, stability, clarity, that I can't, again, overemphasize the importance of this relaxation, that for many of us, if not all, most of us in the modern world, we come to this practice with a lot of tightness, tension, agitation, and we have this attitude in the modern world that if we want to do something well, we've got to put all of our effort into it. We've got to push hard to achieve results. We do not want that attitude here. If we have the attitude, if I push hard, I'll get some results, we're just going to get agitated, frustrated, upset. So we need to leave that out. Relaxation. So yes, we need to put effort, but that effort shouldn't be tight, shouldn't be tense. It's not sort of push hard. The harder I push, the more I'll go. Relax and reflect on the benefits. And then you'll have a lot of enthusiasm for the practice. With that enthusiasm, the actual practice will become effortless rather than I have to put a lot of effort. I have to push hard to get somewhere. And again, those objects, we're using the breath here. I think for many of us as a beginner, particularly breath, very, very helpful because it helped us to get out of our discursive conceptual mind into the body and out of the past and the future into the present moment. And again, if I come back and do another day's shamatha practice, maybe we'll look at the second 2 practices, focusing on the mind, resting in awareness. And those 2 tools, mindfulness and introspection. So remember, mindfulness here, smrti in Pali, in Sanskrit, sati in Pali, literally means to remember the object, to hold the object, to not forget the object. And then introspection is quality control. Monitoring that mindfulness. Are we still holding the object or are we starting to get dull or distracted? And so we saw there that the first fault really in this practice is laziness, that we really need to reflect on the benefits of this practice. If we're just doing this practice because someone told us to do it, I think we're not going to put much effort. We're going to be very lazy because it's not so easy, particularly in the initial stages of this practice. We'll do a little bit and then we'll go, oh, no, this is too difficult. I'd rather go off and play some sport or listen to some music or do something else, and we won't have time. Then forgetfulness, again, mindfulness is the antidote. And then these 2 imbalances of laxity and excitation or dullness and distraction. Introspection is monitoring that. And then application was if we notice we're distracted or dull, reapply mindfulness. And then there was that over-application, which for us as beginners is not really a problem. It's actually when we're focusing very well and we're adjusting our focus unnecessarily. So we need to be mindful of that later in the practice when we're getting much better. So what I'd like to do now is look at these prerequisites, how to set up our life in such a way to support this practice. And there are 6 mentioned here in the Indian and Tibetan texts. And to introduce these 6, I'd like to read again from Alan Wallace's Attention Revolution book. And he says the following: when I lead shamatha seminars, I like to think of them as expeditions rather than retreats. The word retreat has the connotation not only of withdrawal, but also of defeat. And that certainly isn't the spirit of such practice. The word expedition, on the other hand, suggests adventure, conquest, and exploration. The Latin roots of the word have to do with extricating yourself, literally stepping out of some situation in which you've gotten stuck. In the practice of shamatha, we discover how deeply our minds are trapped in the twin ruts of excitation and laxity. In the Buddhist tradition, a mind trapped in these ruts is said to be dysfunctional. And in order to make it serviceable, it is helpful to step out of our normal activities seek out a spacious sense of solitude, and explore the frontiers of the mind. This expedition doesn't require blind faith or allegiance to any religious creed or metaphysical belief system. Over the past 3 millennia, contemplatives from various Asian cultures with diverse belief systems have followed the path of Shamatha to its culmination, and they have reported their findings. We don't need to accept their claims simply on their own authority, but if we are inspired by earlier accounts of the benefits of this practice, we may venture forth on this path to see for ourselves whether we can achieve the results of the contemplative explorers who have preceded us. There are great adventures ahead, but also perils and dead ends. Sometimes the path is clear, but now and then it may seem to disappear altogether. The purpose of relying on those who know this path from their own experience is to save time. 6 prerequisites for sustained rigorous training are set forth in many Indian and Tibetan Buddhist meditation manuals. These are some of the essential causes and conditions that will produce the fruit of shamatha. So let's have a look at these 6 prerequisites. What can we do in our life to support this practice? The first is supportive environment, which is really the outer conditions. And here, Tsongkhapa in his text on shamatha within Lam Rim says the area or the place where we meditate should have 5 attributes. The first is easy access. So that it says, so that necessities such as food and clothing may be readily obtained. So he's presenting this in the context, if we want to go off somewhere and do a long-term shamatha retreat, these are the things we need. But also, I think you'll find as we go through this list of 6, even if we're not going off on some long shamatha retreat in some cabin somewhere in the hills, if we pay attention to these 6 and integrate them as much as possible in our daily life, that will be very helpful for us. The second is being a good place to live, where there are no wild beasts, enemies, etc. So if we're in retreat and, centuries ago, they often retreated in the jungle or the forest. And if there was lions and tigers there, that wouldn't be very good for shamatha practice. The third, being a good piece of ground. It does not breed sickness, so a healthy environment, not one full of disease. The fourth one, very important for all of us, offering good companionship, insofar as your companions are ethically disciplined and like-minded. This brings up the idea in Buddhism of the idea of sangha, spiritual community. If we have the idea, I can do this on my own, I'll go home and I'll have a daily meditation practice and I'm really going to make a lot of progress on my own, I think it's not going to happen. For most people, we need a lot of help. We need a lot of help. Because in fact, unfortunately, the things and people around us in our daily life are often pushing us in the opposite direction. And it's very hard on our own to swim against the current, against the tide. We just get swept away. That's been my experience many years ago. So if we really want to start in a new direction in our life, we need help, we need support, we need sangha, like-minded people. If you can be part of a Buddhist organization like this, great. If you don't, at least have a few people around you, like-minded, that you can help support each other. So, so important. I think if you try and do it on your own, you're going to find it almost impossible. That was my experience in talking to many people. The fifth one, being well situated. This is the place where we meditate. It says there's not so many people about in the day and little noise at night. So remember, we mentioned earlier, particularly for shamatha practice, quiet place, very, very helpful. Too much noise, we get distracted. If you're in a noisy environment, you can't find a quiet place, noise cancelling headphones, very good. I use them if I'm traveling and so forth or in noisy environments, very helpful. So that was the outer conditions. Now, the other 5 are inner conditions. And the second and third sort of go together. That is having few desires and being content. And having few desires is for things we don't have, and being content is with what we do have. So to follow that up, to discuss that a little bit more, I'll read again from Attention Revolution by Alan Wallace. He says, without these 2 qualities, your mind will never settle down in the practice. You will be constantly thinking of things you want but don't have, and you'll fret that your present circumstances are inadequate in one way or another. This does not mean you must quell your desire for happiness, but is necessary to refocus your aspirations on transforming your own mind as a means to genuine well-being. Mental balance is the gateway to finding genuine happiness, and shamatha is the key that opens that gate. So again, if we still have the view that the source of my happiness is out there, I think you're going to have a lot of desires. You're never going to be content. So again, as he mentioned, shift your view, shift inwards, understand that source of genuine happiness is within, and that this practice is the key that opens that gate. And therefore you'll find you won't be chasing after all these sensory pleasures, and you'll be comfortable with what you have. The fourth one is few activities, which means to basically simplify our life. Unfortunately, in our modern world, we tend to fill up our life, our daily life, with lots of activities for mainly two reasons. One is it's felt in our modern world, if you're not doing something, you're not being productive. So just do something, just do something. And the other reason we fill up our day with lots of activities is if we're sitting there quietly, then it really sort of forces us to look at the state of our mind, which is a mess. We don't like what we see, so we just distract ourselves to busy ourselves so we don't have to look at our own mind. Because often I hear people say, oh yeah, I'd really like to meditate, but I don't have time. I don't have time to meditate. I think that's never a valid excuse. Of course, the reality is many of us have busy lives. And some of the activities we do are essential. Most of us need to work at some level to have enough money, to have a roof over our head and food in our stomach. Some of us have family responsibilities and maybe some other responsibilities. But above and beyond those essential responsibilities, we tend to fill up our day with all sorts of stuff, which often are not very helpful and actually sometimes causes us harm. And so here, Alan Wallace says the following: given the fast pace of modern life and the general emphasis on keeping busy, it can be difficult to make this shift to simplicity. Our work can be a kind of narcotic, concealing the unrest and turbulence of our minds. And a lifestyle that alternates between hard work and hard play can keep us constantly busy without ever gaining a clue about the meaning of life or the potentials of human consciousness. So how do we overcome that? What we could do is try and force things out of our life, cut things out of our life forcibly. But I think that won't work. It won't work. Rather, as we mentioned a couple of times already, we need to really reflect on the inner prerequisites, the prerequisites for this, and to really particularly reflect on our precious human life and death and impermanence. To see we've got this precious human life, and it's not going to last forever. So let's make this life meaningful while we have that opportunity. And on that point, I'd like to read a quote from Steve Jobs, and I think all of you know who Steve Jobs was. And this was a talk he gave to students at Stanford University in 2005. He said the following: when I was 17, I read a quote that went something like, if you live each day as if it was your last, someday you'll most certainly be right. It made an impression on me. And since then, for the past 33 years, I have looked in the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I'm about to do today? And whenever the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something. Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. Because almost everything, all external expectations or pride or fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. Remembering that you're going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart. So I think some very good advice there from Steve Jobs. The fifth of the six prerequisites is ethical discipline. This is an ethical way of life. So I think certainly all valid spiritual traditions have as their basis ethical way of life, avoiding harming others. And I think any meaningful life must have that as the basis. But also here in this attention revolution, he not only mentions this social ethics of avoiding harming others, he also talks about environmental ethics, looking after our environment, and also psychophysical ethics, means to look after our body and mind as well. So you can also include that in ethical discipline. And then the last one is let go of compulsive thinking. Many of us have some obsessive compulsive thinking about certain things, and that's churning away all day long. And that just torments us. And so here Alan Wallace says, many of us let compulsive thoughts dominate our minds. These won't stop overnight, but as we engage in shamatha practice, both during and between sessions, it is important to observe the mind's activities and restrain it when it falls into thought patterns that aggravate mental disturbances. So to not simply allow our mind to run off on all sorts of stories all day long, blah, 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 just to observe, not try and block, but if we can just observe those things come up, they have no energy, they'll just dissipate. That's why the shamatha practice of observing the mind would be very helpful here. Rather than constantly getting caught up in our thoughts and emotions, we could simply observe them as they arise and pass. And that would help us to let go of this compulsive thinking. So these are the 6 prerequisites. And here Tsongkhapa says there are 3 main ones. He says the most important ones are good ethical discipline, so ethical way of life, avoiding harming others, seeing desires as disadvantageous, i.e., not thinking that the source of happiness is out there and constantly chasing sensory pleasures, and dwelling in appropriate area, to be in a place that's quiet and has like-minded people, supportive people. So he says these are the 3 key ones, 3 main ones of the 6. And that brings us to the last of the 3 shamatha practices we're going to do today. That is to focus at the entrance of the nostrils. So we're focusing on and when we say entrance of the nostrils, it could be the actual entrance of the nostrils or this little area above the upper lip. So anywhere in this area here. And we're noticing the sensations of the breath as the breath flows in and out through this area here. So again, we're not imagining the breath coming in and going down, coming up and going out. We're just noticing the sensations in this area. Now, the tendency in this practice can be one of 2. And that is, it's a little bit harder to notice sensations here than the rising along the abdomen. So one tendency can be to really tighten the focus. We have to focus intently, but not with tension. So the tendency can be really to tense our focus to try and pick it up here. So we don't want to do that. So if you notice a lot of tension around the eyes or the forehead, relax, 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 relax. Very important. The other tendency can be, because we don't notice much, we force the breath. We breathe more heavily to pick up sensations. So we don't want to do that either. Just be patient and rest there attentively, without tension, noticing whatever's there. And also, because we're bringing the attention up and it's a much smaller area, this practice is particularly good for improving clarity of attention. But remember, not to lose the basis in relaxation. And like the previous practice of the abdomen, when we're focusing here, if you find yourself getting distracted a lot, you can bring in counting the breath if you find it helpful. So that's the practice we're going to do now. So if you'd like to find a nice, comfortable posture, let's do that practice. We begin, as always, by settling the body into its natural state. A state of relaxation, stillness, and vigilance. Softening and relaxing all the muscles in the face. All the muscles around the eyes, soft and relaxed. And relaxing more deeply with each out-breath. And with each out-breath, letting go of any thoughts that may have arisen. Happily releasing them. Releasing them into space. And simply allowing the mind to come to rest. To come to rest in the stillness of the present moment. And whilst resting in that open, spacious stillness, start to become aware of the sensations of the breath at the entrance of the nostrils. Noticing the sensations as the breath flows across this area. Not trying to force the breath in any way, simply allowing it to flow naturally. And keeping all the muscles in the face soft and relaxed. Maintaining the basis of relaxation. Relaxed body, relaxed mind. If you're simply finding that you're falling into dullness or laxity, then use the in-breath as an opportunity to arouse and refresh your focus, to sharpen your focus on the breath. And if you find there's a lot of tightness or tension in the body, particularly a lot of tension in the face, and if you can't release that tension, then move away from the nostrils, go back to the abdomen, and simply notice sensations of the breath in the area of the abdomen to re-establish a basis in relaxation. And then with a more relaxed body and mind, then you can return to focusing at the nostrils. What I'd like to do now briefly is have a look at these stages of progress that we go through in this practice. This is based on this diagram we commonly see, particularly in Tibetan Buddhism, this windy road diagram. So again, the Panchen Losang Chökyi Gyaltsen said earlier, Shamatha is attained by progressing through the 9 stages, relying on the 8 antidotes to abandon the 5 faults. So we see the 9 stages listed there that we go through in this practice. So let's very briefly have a look at those 9 stages. So the first stage, we're down the bottom. It's called directed attention. So there we see, again, the elephant, which is our mind. The fact that it's black is symbolizing laxity. The monkey is discursive conceptual thought in general. And the black color is excitement. So you can see the monkey and elephant are running wildly ahead of the meditator. Poor old meditator is being left behind. And in the meditator's hands, in the left hand is the rope of mindfulness. In the right hand, the hook of introspection. So this is stage 1 called directed attention. And this is the beginning stage of the practice. And we achieve this stage if we can simply focus on the object for a second or 2. So for most of us, if we use the breath, we would achieve this first stage probably with our very first meditation. But if our object is some sort of complex visualization, this may take days or weeks even to get to this first stage. But with the breath, it's not so difficult to get to the first stage. What we notice at this first stage called directed attention is we're hardly on the object. We focus on the object, and let's say the breath is the object. We focus on the breath, maybe 2 or 3 seconds, and then off we go on some story. And we may be off on that story for many minutes at a time. And then after some minutes, our introspection finally goes, oh, hang on, I'm supposed to be focusing on the breath. We come back, reapply mindfulness to the breath for another 2 or 3 seconds, and then off we go again for a long time. And when that happens, people go, I can't meditate. I just can't meditate. In fact, my mind seems to be getting worse now since I've started meditating. Before I was meditating, it seemed to be okay, but now I can see it's completely out of control. And it's even worse than that, because in a group situation, then often people open their eyes, look around, everyone's very quiet and still. And I'm hopeless. I can't meditate. Everyone else can meditate. I can't meditate. I'm useless. If this is your experience, very good. It means you can meditate. You're actually making progress. Because the very first sign of progress is to notice how out of control our mind really is. If we've never meditated, we have this illusion that our mind is sort of okay. Okay, I get a bit distracted and dull, but, focusing on the breath, that can't be too difficult. And when we realize we can hardly concentrate for 2 or 3 seconds, that's what we see. So we're actually making progress. We actually see for the very first time how out of control our mind really is. So good work. You're making progress. But then if we keep practicing, we go around the bend of the road to the second road. And this we achieve through reflecting on the practice. We move ahead in the practice by reflecting more about the practice, the benefits of the practice, how to do the practice. We put a little bit more effort and we can get to the second stage, which is called continuous attention. It doesn't mean we can focus on the breath continuously. No, continuous means there are short periods of meditation, maybe up to a minute, where we can focus on the object. So maybe we can focus on the breath for 20 or 30 seconds. But even here at the second stage, when we get distracted, we tend to get distracted for long periods of time. So even at this second stage, we tend to be more off the object than on the object. But we notice a little bit of stability and clarity at certain times. That's why the white on top of the elephant's head there is our mind is sometimes settling down a bit more. We have a bit more stability and clarity. Maybe up to a minute, we can hold the object. If we keep practicing, we go around the corner, and the next road is called the road of mindfulness, because here at stage 3 and 4, our mindfulness is getting a lot better. In fact, the third stage is called resurgent attention. Our mindfulness now is getting a lot better, means we can hold the object most of the session. And if we get distracted, we quickly notice we're distracted and come back. And that's symbolized by the elephant turning the head backwards, meaning that yes, we maybe can hold the object 5, maybe 10 minutes at a time. And when we get distracted, we quickly recognize that and quickly come back to the object. And so, but here at stage 3, we see the rabbit has come into the picture on the back of the elephant. The rabbit is symbolizing subtle laxity, subtle dullness. Remember, we saw there were levels of laxity. The very coarse ones are easy to recognize. It's easy to recognize when you're after you've fallen asleep or when you're disconnected from the object altogether. But when we get to subtle laxity, remember, we're holding the object. It seems quite clear, but our attention is a little bit slack. If we don't start to pick that up here, we'll get stuck here because we can hold the object quite well, but we still need a lot of work to do on the quality of our attention. So we need to, from stage 3 on, we need to pick up the subtle laxity, the rabbit. Otherwise, we get stuck. But then if we keep practicing, we'll get to stage 4. And stage 4 is called close attention. Now our mindfulness, you see the rope of mindfulness is tied to the elephant of the mind. Now our rope of mindfulness is getting very good, meaning we can hold the object the entire session without ever completely losing it. But still a lot of work to do on the quality of attention. So even at stage 4, we could be, for example, focusing on the breath, but most of our attention is thinking about what we're going to do the rest of the day. But still in the background, we're holding the breath. We never lose it. That can happen at stage 4. So we still got a lot of work to do on quality. But that's close attention. And then after that, we need to fine tune our attention. That's where introspection comes in. You'll see over stage 5 and 6 here, the hook of introspection more prominent, meaning now we're picking up more subtle levels of laxity and excitation and starting to correct that. The analogy in the middle stages here is a bit like a guitar string. If a guitar string is too tight or too loose, it doesn't play well. If our mind is too tight or too loose, it doesn't focus well. So we're constantly adjusting our focus. Too tight, relax. Too loose, sharpen. We're doing that finer and finer over the middle levels here. So stage 5 is called tamed attention. So here we see in the monkey in the tree, right in the top left-hand corner, holding some fruit. And the description underneath there basically says that what can happen over these middle stages is because now our mind is becoming more calm and clear. This actually creates a space for creativity to come through. So you may find over these middling stages, you're sitting there, it's nice and quiet, and then some great idea comes up, some very creative thought comes up, or maybe some problem you've been trying to work out for the last days or weeks, suddenly here comes the answer, boom, here's the answer. So you get all of these things coming up here because our mind is creating that space for it to come up. But what the monkey in the tree holding the fruit is saying is that virtuous thoughts at the time of shamatha practice is an interruption. So we need to stop them. At other times, not necessary. So what it's saying here is that if we're sitting here focusing on the breath quite nicely, calm, clear, focused, and then suddenly some great idea comes up, if we go, oh yeah, it's a great idea, and then we start entertaining that idea, we're distracted. What we want to do is if some great idea or solution comes up to a problem, we go, okay, great idea, solution, I'll attend to that after the meditation. And then continue the practice. That's what the monkey in the tree is all about. So that's 5th, a tamed attention. 6th here is called pacified attention, because even up until that stage, sometimes there's a little bit of resistance to the training. You still have a bit of resistance, but now you have no resistance to the training. You happily do it for a long time. But here, what we see, it says problems persisting. It says desire, depression, lethargy, and drowsiness. Wow, it seems like at a high stage we have all these problems. No, what's happening is that now we're really dredging our mind. So a lot of stuff that we've been sort of suppressing now is coming up, but it needs to come up. But fortunately, by this stage, we can quite easily sit there and observe all this stuff come up and pass without getting caught up in it. So we're really dredging the deeper levels of our mind, getting rid of all of this stuff. And so that's why it says that here. So that's stage 6. And then we go around the corner to stage 7. And this road is called the road of enthusiasm, because now what's driving our practice is we're full of enthusiasm to this practice because we're already experiencing a lot of benefits. And so we're just completely enthusiastic about this practice. And at stage 7 here, what we see is the meditator saying goodbye to the monkey, which is the conceptual mind. And there's only a little bit of black left on the tail of the elephant. So what's this saying at stage 7? That sometimes a little hint of agitation, a little hint of laxity might arise. We dispel it immediately, And then if we continue the practice, we'll get to stage 8, where we see there's no black on the elephant now, the monkey's gone, rabbit's long gone, and then this is called single-pointed attention. So here at stage 8, all we need is a little bit of effort to start the meditation, and then really the practice runs effortlessly with no hint of subtle laxity or subtle excitation, flawless focus for extended period of time, even a few hours if we want to meditate that long. Then to get to stage 9 is called attentional balance. Now in attentional balance, it becomes seamless, that in and out of meditation, it's all effortless. And we can sit there in perfect meditation for at least 4 hours at a time, no problems. But still, we haven't achieved shamatha. To achieve shamatha, which is the next diagram in the middle at the top here, we have to go through what's called physical and mental pliancy. So what happens after stage 9 is there's a radical transition in the body and the mind, whereby we end up with this physical pliancy. So we have a lot of bliss arising in the body, and a lot of bliss in the mind. And then the body, as a result of that, the body and mind could become completely serviceable. And so it's said that when we actually achieve shamatha, our body feels light like cotton, very light, not heavy and like now. And that's symbolized by the person flying through the sky. So that's physical pliancy, body light like cotton. And then we see the meditator riding on the elephant of the mind. So up until shamatha, there can be still a little bit of resistance to where we turn our mind. But now in shamatha, we can turn our mind to whatever we want without any resistance whatsoever. So that's mental pliancy. So that is describing the achievement of shamatha. But remember, shamatha itself actually is not getting us any closer to liberation from suffering. Shamatha provides a serviceable mind, gives us a serviceable mind. I mean, a lot of immediate benefits, our mind more calm, less stress, agitation. So yes, we have a lot of immediate benefits from shamatha practice and achieving shamatha. But if we want to move then towards liberation from suffering, we need to add vipassana. We need to add insight practice. And that's what's the last diagram there. We see the meditator on the elephant of the mind with a sword in their right hand. This is a sword of wisdom to cut through ignorance and mental afflictions. And so here, there's a couple of descriptions. It says the root of samsara, that's the situation we find ourselves in, is cut by the union of shamatha and vipassana, observing emptiness. So on the basis of a calm, clear, focused mind, we do vipassana practice to come to realize this emptiness, that nothing exists independently, everything's interdependent. And we put those together, we can cut through the root of samsara, we can cut through ignorance, mental afflictions. So therefore it says, equipped with mindfulness and introspection, seek the correct view of emptiness. So therefore, if we have shamatha, vipassana practice is pretty straightforward. Without shamatha practice, because everyone, in the various Buddhist traditions, all the Buddhist traditions are basically saying that the way out of samsara, the way out of suffering is come to insight into nature of reality, vipassana practice. So people go, let's do vipassana practice. And then they do it for week, year, nothing happens because they don't have a basis, because their mind is not calm, clear, focused enough. If we want to penetrate the nature of reality, we need shamatha. We need a very calm, clear, focused mind. Without that, you can do Vipassana practice the rest of your life and not really get very far at all. That's what it's mentioned here. So that's very briefly the stages to shamatha. So we can take maybe a couple of questions now before we take a break. Any questions? I think there might be one in the Zoom here. Let me have a look. Yeah, there's a question here. Alan Wallace suggests that it's hard to get to stage 3 shamatha outside a retreat setting. In the UK, there are a few shamatha retreats. Is following a recorded retreat at home a useful intermediate step? Yes. So as far as retreat goes, what I would recommend initially is do group retreat. Because even if you've never done retreat, you think, oh, I can do a weekend retreat myself for 2 days at home. I think you're going to find it very, very difficult. Because all those things at home, you know, oh, I got to do this, I got to check that, I got to go here, I got to do that. Before you know it, the weekend's gone and you haven't really meditated. So we need help, you know, Sangha. So I would recommend start with group retreat, maybe even a day retreat, a weekend retreat or so, a week retreat, group retreat, because there's someone leading it. You have the group energy, much, and you're away from your normal environment, much easier. Once you've done some group retreats, then you can start to slowly do some retreats at home yourself. But don't say the first retreat, I'll do a week or a month or something. I think too difficult. Start with 1 day, 2 days or so forth. And as the question here says, very helpful to give you structure as an intermediate step is use a recording from a retreat that you like to follow. So you could use a day recording, a weekend recording, or a week's recording of a retreat, because then you've got your structure and you've got someone giving you instruction and guiding, even though you're doing it on your own. So that's a very good intermediate step to do. And then eventually, of course, you have some experience in doing retreats on your own, then you can set your own structure and so forth. So yes, it's good to do those in stages. Otherwise, if you go from nothing to personal retreat, no structure, I'll do it myself a week at home, I think you're going to find it extremely difficult. Yeah, any other questions? I think that was all on the Zoom so far. Any questions here? Otherwise, we'll take a tea break. Yeah.
Whenever I try to focus on the sensations there, I don't find any.
You don't find any?
Yeah, and probably the stomach one easier. Is there any benefit of doing right here?
Yeah, yeah. So the question is, she finds it difficult to focus, to notice any sensations in the nostrils. Yes, of course, if our mind is not very sharp and clear, you'll probably find it quite difficult to focus on the sensations here. So you can either do a couple of things. You can either just stay there very patiently without getting tight, just patiently stay there, patiently paying close attention, because if we're sort of half asleep, thinking we're going to pick up sensations here, we could stay there forever and never pick up sensations. So if we notice they're a bit dull, sharpen the focus without getting tight, patiently. If you notice that's still not working, then yes, you can go back to the abdomen and work there for some time to develop relaxation stability. And then later times, you can move back to the nostrils. So we're not saying that the nostrils is better than the abdomen. No, we use the object that works best for us. Okay. Anything else? Yeah, last question, and we'll take a break.
You said in the middle that you do not imagine the breath going in and out.
In this practice.
In this practice. But if you do imagine, that is also a sort of meditation, right?
Right. So the question is, I said earlier that in the shamatha practice, observing nostrils, we don't imagine the breath coming in, going down, going up, going out. We don't do that here. Can we do that? Sure. But and could it be useful? Yes. But as a shamatha practice, there's too much movement involved. So as a shamatha practice, it probably wouldn't be effective. Might it be effective for some other purpose in conjoined? Sure. And there are some practices that do that sort of imagination for a particular purpose. But as a shamatha practice, that's probably not so effective because you're imagining a lot of different movements. So you want to remember, narrow down. You know. Okay, let's take a break there. Come back at 3:30 and we'll look at largely in the last session how to integrate all of this into our daily life.